Welcome to Haydenfilms Verge, episode number 8. I am your host, Hayden Craddolph.
And I'm your co-host, Barron Jr.
So Darin, tell us a little bit about today. Today's been a special day. I know we were upstairs. We're all in the building. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, well, today we had a very jam-packed, exciting day for Hayden Films. We got the chance to work with the Wisdom Coalition, and they were able to really give their presentation about how they help people in the workplace to have more joy in their lives. And so today we're going to talk to Catherine Ann Muldoon, and that's going to be a very exciting conversation.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. But before we get started on our podcast, please make sure you like and share this link, and make sure you subscribe. It helps out our students. And right over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see a card from some of our previous episodes. So check those out. And now on to our show. Catherine, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And I had the privilege of being upstairs with the two of you and Wisdom Coalition. You know, what an event. I mean, it's really exciting what the two of you are doing, really,
well, thank
with
you so
Hayden
much.
Films.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. I know I was in the rain last night, so I got to see little remnants of the hurricane. Now, did you get into any of the rain on the way up here, or what's it like down your way? Because I know you're in Jersey area, right?
Yeah, and it was interesting just traveling an hour and a half here this morning. I think I saw 3 of 4 seasons in one trip, starting out teeming rain, into the fog, into then humidity.
Oh my gosh.
And now we have the sun here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's way over your heads, right?
Yeah, now
I
we're
came into the
inside.
sunshine.
Now we're inside with air conditioning. We're trying to turn it on and off during out the show. So we wanted to invite you on our show today because, again, you know, our audience is really vast in terms of, you know, we have younger Zs and millennials and really not just filmmakers but business people. And we really wanted to introduce, you know, legal concepts to them, you know, maybe just at the basic level, and we can take it however it goes in our conversation. But from an entrepreneur perspective, and I know you're a legal educator and a legal consultant yourself, can you walk through the process of how you became someone as an expert in legal? What was the process for you in your early years to where you are today?
You know, I definitely had a vision. I knew I wanted to do something globally, something, you know, cross-border, internationally. And certainly that's what I studied in university. But from that point on, I guess it's hard work. It's a bit of serendipity. I asked a lot of questions. I joined things. I raised my hand to be part of, you know, team exercises. You know, we had these sort of skunk works projects. You know, how do we monitor compliance? How do we test ethics training? How do we know that people understand what we're telling them? And just participating step by step, and certainly the 20-year career that I've had with the corporate world has lended that opportunity to sort of test new things, talk to people in different industries, and really collaborate. So it's sort of a tale of just kind of asking questions and listening, and really staying close to where the industry is going. And I think it just kept it exciting for me. I would not say that I'm technologically savvy. In fact, as I throw that word out, I'm imagining my husband laughing as I ask him to, you know, help me with all sorts of different things. But I know how now to, as a strategy, use technology to improve performance, whatever we're doing across the corporate world. And when I got into consulting, and you said educator too, certainly, I mean, you know, I've been a mentor, I've been a professor. I like to work with young people and people at a different point in their career, because I learn as much from them as they learn from me. Because one of the great things in coming up in the industry is, you know, you're asking your own question. You have your own vantage point, and feeling comfortable in that and listening to that, not just of, you know, people that have experiences that I don't have, that are, you know, perhaps older than I, but really listening to people just starting out, how they see the world and how they see compliance and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, just to the point you just made right now, I mean, that's one of the things that we do here at our institute is we have like a team of scholars, professionals, and students. And to get that mixed vantage point from all of them, it allows us to grow. Tell us a little bit more about the process, and I know we talked about this earlier, but talk about the process of going out and doing research to find the appropriate attorney for maybe a particular project, or maybe attorney or a record for a company, or how does one go about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, wherever you start, if you're an entrepreneur, if it's a startup company of sorts, or you're new to a position, I always recommend doing your own research first. I would never, when I first started in-house, I didn't just pick up the phone and call attorneys. Number one, it's expensive. Number two, you're not going to get the answers necessarily that help you meet your goal if you're not asking the right questions. So I would say, do your very detailed research. So by the time you call the expert on the phone, and trust me, we all need experts. None of us have done everything. So by the time you pick up the phone and call, your questions are very pointed. They're very narrow, and they solve the problem that you have. So that's my recommendation. Really do your own research. Anywhere you do it. If you have a team of people, brainstorm. There are so many ways to research online. And of course, you have all sorts of legal periodicals and Westlaw and that sort of thing where you can research as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, because I think you had mentioned earlier with younger people wanting to venture into the corporate world. And so my question to you is, what is the process for younger people like myself if they were interested in getting into law? What kind of work is required in the process for them to get to that point?
Well, certainly law school, that whole thing. So if you're at that point and you've graduated and you're looking, what kind of career do I want? I want to get in the corporate world. I want to be an expert at this certain thing. I would say don't wait for the opportunity to come to you. Change who you are. Be the person that is the right candidate for that opportunity. And the two of you in your group, this is what you do. You can define yourself as anything online. Do your own research, write blog posts, publish an article. This is available to you. If you have an interest in international trade, don't just hope that somebody knocks on your door and says, we want a beginner and we want to develop you in international trade. Start publishing. People will get to know your name and associate it with that topic and soon see you as an expert. I had a situation, we worked with the chemical industry, and REACH, which was a European regulation that addressed chemicals, probably 15 years ago or so. And I thought, this really jibes well with what I'm doing, and I want to kind of get ahead of this. So I did an article in REACH, and no one was doing it, so it was available to me. I worked with a legal magazine. And the next International Bar Association event, I walked in and someone said, "Oh, here she is, the REACH expert." And I thought that was so funny. And I probably knew as much as anybody, but I put my head down and learned it so that I could answer some questions about deadlines and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's so important is to know the subject, know the topic well, and doing the research. Because I think a lot of times what happens is that when you go into a certain field, it's important to know your stuff, right? And not sit at the table and not really know the different topics or the different subjects. But like you said, doing that research is so key.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm gonna switch over because I know running a company myself, working with different types of clients that we have and projects we have, one of the things that come up a lot is making ethical choices and decisions within running a nonprofit or working on different projects and time deliverables and stuff like that. How does a company or an individual keep themselves out of trouble, so to speak, with these types of ethical issues that arise? And sometimes it's not their fault that they may navigate down that path. Walk us through that. Walk our audience through that process.
It's very interesting because I love the question, Hayden. I love the way you present that, because we're not talking about what's legal. We're not talking about what's compliant. And both of those things might be what's ethical, but they may not necessarily be in line with the values, your own values, the values of your organization. So ethics really is something a bit different. It may include the other two, but it is something that's a bit different. And you have to look at your mission, you have to look at your values and make decisions that are in line with your values. And someone asked me, well, how are bad decisions made? And it's very rare. We were doing a lot of training on ethical decision making. And of course, you fall back on bad decision making. How are those decisions made? And it's very rare that an executive is sitting there saying, he's with his hands together saying, I want to do something that's evil. I want to do something really bad. What happens more frequently is that there are competing priorities. Maybe everyone's busy and you're trying to escalate something. You're not sure if there's something that may be unethical. Maybe we're talking about a tax issue and that it's legal, but in line with what you're doing, in that jurisdiction, it's not in line with your values. You're questioning yourself, but no one's listening to you and no one's responding to you and everybody's busy. That's how bad decisions are made. And certainly in the sales context, we see that again and again because sales folks are just focused on the incentives.
Yeah.
And that's what we tell them. These are your incentives. These are your KPIs. Well, if their incentives aren't in line with the values of the organization, you have competing priorities.
Sure.
Which one?
They're chasing a commission check, perhaps, and not knowing that.
That's right.
Exactly.
So to the average person, it might seem that that priority is really the one that trumps the other.
Yeah. So quick. I'm going to try to, because we've worked with filmmakers in particular, and you see these horror stories where competing interests on a particular film project. So if you have a director or a screenplay and there's a vision for that project, but the money came in from a different person, an entity or a person that doesn't really understand the creativity component, you'll see from time to time where all of a sudden the big money starts shifting the project. So does money become a factor in general in terms of these decisions, sometimes clouding someone's judgment on projects that you've worked on, or how can a filmmaker maybe adjust to those issues when it's monetary?
Absolutely. I mean, if your whole judgment is how can you make the most money? How can you avoid paying the most money? I mean, that's where your decision's going to go each and every time. So what you want to have is, an understanding of the breadth of the project, the breadth of, what's going on in terms of, the goal, what's expected of you and your team, and not so focused on finance. We're all in business. We're all in business to make money. It is a critical goal. But if that's the only goal, that's when you're at risk for things like paying bribes, things like a film that becomes really disjointed because there was one vision and then someone came in with the capital and has decided, no, we're going to take it this other way. I mean, nothing's worse than people on a team with different goals, especially when they don't even realize they have different goals. So, I mean, it's really about collaboration in a very transparent way and catching these things each and every time and checking in with other people on the team and making sure that you're not just focused on one aspect, finance to the detriment of other things.
Yeah, how many years does it take to get to where you were able to get to? How many years does that take in this practice?
Gosh, I'm afraid you're going to ask me my age,
No.
and I'll have to say 29. It really there are no sort of amount of years really, except that if you're saying in the legal world someone wants to go into a corporate job, the expectation used to be 7+ years in a law firm. Certainly what I did. 7
years before getting to a corporate position.
That's right.
Okay.
Now, I'm seeing a shift, and it's more kind of the 3 to 5, even 2 to 3 range. So just getting in a law firm and starting on that trip, it's easier now. And I think that there are just more corporate jobs available because compliance and legal issues are paramount within an organization.
Yeah, and so, Catherine, what got you into law, or why did you get into that field? What motivated you?
It's interesting. I remember talks with my father. I remember being an advocate. One thing I probably wouldn't do well is to be a judge. I really that's never been my goal. I've always taken a side, and I sort of love that. Always looked at the legal field as a noble profession, without anyone really around me that was who was a lawyer. So it's just kind of my own trip, I guess. My own career goals. I think I've always been open along the way to the opportunities in front of me, trying different things. I had this one experience. It was after law school, and it was at a company called the American Conference Institute, and it was like this. It was just a think tank of lawyers, and we built education materials for any sort of legal teams or industries, any kind of law. And it was fascinating. And we had to market it. And it was looking at, legal issues in a completely different way. And I've taken that, that was only a year and a half of my life, and I've taken that experience through the rest of my career, even how to, it's easy to focus on a legal issue for me. That's what I do, and it's easy for me to understand what position we need to take. The challenge moving into the corporate world was convincing business people, was knowing how to talk to business people. I can say to the two of you compliance and, your eyes will glaze over. But if I said to you risk, just that simple change,
Sure.
business people live in the world of risk and really understanding. So my career has taken a lot of different turns. I mean, I'm very loyal. I stayed at one place for 20 years, but only because it was a challenge. There were opportunities that were different day to day. So I was just open to it, asked a lot of questions of people, went to conferences, talked to people to see what they were doing, and could I see myself doing something that they do? I always checked it against what I wanted to be, though. I didn't just listen to one person and think, that's the career for me. I thought about how would I make that mine, kind of thing.
So quick segue back to film a little bit, because I like watching law-based films, right? And so as an attorney, and you've grown in this corporate space and corporate law and everything like that, when you watch films that depict law, even from a criminal perspective, or some of the movies are like Aaron Brockovich, what do you see from a lawyer's eye when you watch these films? How close are they to the reality of what goes on in the courtroom or in litigation or in those spaces?
Well, I too like these films and TV shows, I have to say. So I think it's a noble profession. I love the practice of law. I love talking to lawyers. I've checked in with the dean of my law school recently. I still have many of my friends. I like to work with them from Seton Hall Law. I would say, as I'm stumbling, the great thing about the movies and the TV show is the script,
Yeah.
that ability to be perfect and just, the most artful of metaphors and be so eloquent. So I watch and think that was perfectly put, that, the way that, was that issue was, just targeted to the particular person being questioned. I just find it to be really fun to watch.
Yeah.
The real practice of law, there's some mistakes that people make along the way, and you sort of do the best you can. But
in the films, the closing arguments are always perfect. The opening statements are always perfect. The last minute, detective work solve the case. So current news, right? All of the stuff that happens contemporary in the world, and obviously everything's so fluid with everything that's going on from an international space. So when we have these, administration changes or foreign policy changes, and as it pertains to companies have to make big decisions on who's building out their products. How do you handle some of the illegal practices that companies may ultimately inadvertently go down because of human trafficking or some of the people that are working on the supply chain on the other side? How do you avoid those areas in this new 21st century world we're in?
That is a great question. And, it's fraught. There were so many different ways I could take the question, but I'm going to seize upon the supply chain comment, because the only way to ensure your supply chain is compliant is to do a risk assessment. And I tell everyone in, doing cross-border work or, multinational corporations to map their supply chain. It would shock you, I think, how complex some of these supply chains are. And back at headquarters, there are executives that really don't know all of the parties in their supply chain, all the payments being made in their supply chain, all of the processes within their supply chain. So the first step is really to map it out and get absolute visibility to every aspect of their supply chain. And I challenge executives when I say, look at this is a complexity. What material benefit do you get from this additional party? What material benefit do you get from this additional process? And if that executive can't give me a meaningful response, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. Simplifying your supply chain will make so many of these issues, mitigate so many of these risks, make so many of them go away. So that would be my first step.
Yeah.
Certainly when you're talking about administration changes and things of that nature, we're all focused on one or two things, right? We were focused on Trump moving into Biden. There were other things going on. There was a pandemic going. We hadn't anticipated that beforehand. So you're always kind of trying to look forward, but ensure that your compliance and the way you look at world events is flexible enough to move quickly when you haven't anticipated
So
something.
it goes into that quick pivot move.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier today in our
exactly
previous
right.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so if there's a lot of different issues that go on with a lot of different corporations and a lot of different ways of the importance of pivoting and doing that quickly and
Yeah.
knowing how to do that quickly.
Exactly.
Because if you don't, then there could be a lot of issues that could come with that. Yeah.
And really, you need to be now monitoring your compliance program. You don't get the benefit of sitting back and saying, well, I've trained my employees. We have a policy. That's good enough. It's no longer good enough. The Department of Justice has told us that is no longer good enough. So in
Now,
terms
does that
of...
fall,
Go ahead.
just to follow up on that, does that fall in corporations doing more like staff development, or do they have to go into more of going to different compliance seminars, or how do you stay up to Department of Justice? What are their recommendations?
That's certainly one way. Really finance, fund your employees' ability to meet with experts and go to conferences and things like that. That's certainly one way. But the expectation really is that you're going to be using technology and you're going to be able to catch when there's an illegal, some sort of an infraction within your supply chain.
Sure.
You will have visibility to that, catch it, make the changes, and become compliant. So I don't know how companies do that without data analytics and things of that nature.
Well, data science is becoming bigger right now. Big data is becoming bigger. I mean, I think, from a transparency position, you have to be as transparent as possible so you can catch these concepts. So I know you have a new website, Catherine Ann Muldoon, and you're writing articles and insights and resources. Is that where we can send some of our people to check out what you do and learn more about where you're going to be on the road and the next educational presentation that you plan on doing?
Absolutely. I have a number of conferences on my schedule for the fall, and excited to participate with the business community. Certainly, any questions you may have, we have ways to contact me through email. Give me a little bit of time, maybe 48 hours, and I promise I will respond.
Awesome.
But there's a lot going on. We could certainly learn from each other. But yeah, it's an exciting time.
Definitely. And we're going to have your link in the description below so everyone can check them out. So, Catherine, with that said, thank you so much for visiting us today. And we look forward to seeing you on the road and all the different great projects you're going to be working on. So we'll keep a good eye on you. So with that said, everyone, thank you for joining us on the Haydenfilms Verge episode. And to the next episode, continue making a difference.